you considered the messages your outfits send? What do you think your clothes say about you? See, style is about the clothes, but it's not really about the clothes. Every day you make choices about what you're going to wear, but what are you communicating? Welcome to Above and Beyond Style. I'm your host, Maria DiLorenzo, and in 2019, I founded MFD Style, where I provide a unique, intuitive approach to personal styling for those ready to embrace a more meaningful look. With this podcast, I'll uncover key elements of where spirituality, psychology, and style intersect, revealing how you can make intentional wardrobe choices that reflect who you really are. So let me ask you, are you ready to transform into your authentic self? Then it's time. Come with me on this journey, and together we'll take your style above and beyond style. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Above and Beyond Style. Again, this is season 2, where I have brought in just a whole new cast of characters that are connecting with me, really helping me understand from their perspective how style influences some of their work, maybe also where psychology and spirituality might intersect some of their work, but mostly just to give you that expanded view of how we're having this conversation about above and beyond style. So every guest has just deepened this conversation, really enriched it for me. And I'm really excited to talk to today's guest because not only was she formerly a style client of mine, she was also a former colleague of mine and also just become a dear, dear friend. So I'm really, really excited to host and welcome Christina Ferguson. And she is a writer, a speaker, and the founder of Parable. And we're going to talk a lot about Parable in this episode. So you're going to come to learn more about that. So from her work across the for-profit and nonprofit sectors, Christina blends together best practices in strategy, communications, organizational change, and sales to paint new images of what is possible for mission-driven organizations and compel the action to get there. Christina holds a Bachelor of Science in Finance from Villanova University and a Master of Public Policy from Georgetown University. And she is a graduate of the Leading Organizational Change program through Wharton Executive Education at the University of Pennsylvania. So not only is Christina a master of words, where I hired her to help me craft messages and language for my own website, but as I mentioned, we have this shared history and a deep friendship. So Christina, welcome to Above and Beyond Style.
Thank you, Maria. I'm so glad to be here.
It's such an exciting opportunity to really dig in and hear a little bit about your own journey, your entrepreneurial journey, but also hearing your story and your background. And so I'd love you to share with our listeners today a little bit about that and this beautiful new company you have founded called Parable.
Well, thank you. My background, I'll start off, is really in strategy, both in the for-profit and the nonprofit spaces. And I've taken an atypical path to get there. You shared that my master's was in public policy, which is a very analytical professional degree that's meant to set you up to go into government. But instead, I did anything but. I went from higher ed to faith-based organizations and to most recently a professional services firm. And the common thread in all of these roles and places was being able to plan big ideas and implement them. And, actually, when I think about it now, it's not too far off from policy, right? Developing big ideas, implementing them, and then seeing how effective they are. I started Parable by the time this airs about a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. And my entrepreneurial journey and growth was organic. And you and I have talked about this at length. I found myself talking with a lot of friends of mine who were growing their own businesses, and we would talk about different ideas. I just loved diving in with them, wrestling together how they were going to grow their business or talk about themselves. And we'd have these conversations for hours. And you were one of those dear friends who I got to do this with. And throughout these conversations, I would often reflect back to these, strong, impressive, mostly female-founded heads or
Mhm.
organization heads, what I was hearing about who they are and what they're doing. And every time I'd reflect back to one of my friends in this way, I'd hear this relieved sigh in response, like,
Mm.
yes, that's it. I was struggling to articulate it, and you just said it. And so it was through this process that I realized I might have something here.
Mhm.
I've always loved to write. And of course, I've loved strategy work, but I had always viewed them as two different, unrelated skill sets. And it was in these conversations with these individuals who would become my early clients that I realized strategy is what comes before putting pen to paper. It's part of the same process. And so this was how Parable was born, really, combining these two worlds, the planning and then the poetry.
Mm. It's such a perfect description of, especially now that I know your work and have been the recipient of some of your work, and learning and understanding the ways that there is a methodical way to prepare sort of how to get your message out in the world and how you want that message to be crafted before you actually say and put together the words. So I love how
Right.
you just painted that, right? Because it's, to me, especially as a small business owner who frankly didn't have a lot of strategy, and my preliminary work was loose at best, right? When I was in my very early iterations of my business, and I didn't understand the importance of having someone like you to be able to really extract some of these core principles and messages. So I'd love you to help us understand a bit more about some of your key services and what you provide people that are very much mission driven for you.
Sure. I often say that Parable equips organizations to identify who they are, and really more importantly, why they exist.
Yeah.
Number two, where to focus. So their kind of strategic priorities. And number three, how to talk about it. And all three of those pieces, the organizational identity, the strategy, and then the communications, all of it is a story. And not just any story, it's a story that points somewhere, a story that points to a deeper truth about who a founder is,
Mm.
who an organization is. And this is what a parable is, hence the name. That's a story that points somewhere. And I'd imagine, you find this in style too. It's not just about clothes for the sake of clothes, it's pointing to some deeper truth about a person.
Mm.
Um, and in practice, the services that this often includes and that I commonly provide include visioning services, where we're diving into where an organization is looking to chart a course for growth. It includes some branded messages like a mission, a vision, an approach, maybe a statement about why an organization exists. I've done some website content, anywhere from a full site to a single page for some clients. There's strategic planning, identifying, okay, once you know who you are, what fits with that? What are you going to focus on? And I do some content development, some writing, even ghost writing. Right now I'm working with one client specifically writing a book. And so this story about who an organization is comes out in so many ways.
I have such respect for the ways that you've been able to diversify your business to really meet the needs of where people are. And again, as a small business owner, and this is always the perspective I'm going to take, but I can see the effectiveness of having all these various ways to intersect. And one of the things that you and I very much talk about, and I'm going to link this to style, people, don't worry, we're going to get there. But the important groundwork here for me is much of what you've talked about in the essence of Parable, about it pointing towards something, that there is an essential characteristic that I believe has to be present in how this all comes about and where and how the direction gets pointed. And I would say that word is authenticity.
I love that.
Tell me what your reaction is to that and the role that authenticity plays.
I think authenticity is everything. How can you communicate who you are, whether by words or clothes, until you deeply know it for yourself? If strategy has to precede storytelling, then self-discovery has to come before all of that. And I love guiding clients on this journey. I think you and I both do it just in different ways.
Yes.
I'm curious to hear your experience, but what I found in this process of self-discovery with clients is there's a very predictable trajectory. I start working with the client, I ask them what they do, what they envision. And at first it's very jumbled. We do this and we also provide this. And one day we'd love to be able to do this. And oh, there's this one thing that we do every year. We don't even know why we do it, but it's always been that way.
Yeah.
And it's probably a lot like beginning, I don't know, a closet edit. Like, here's this crop top from the 90s and this vintage dress and this purse in a color that doesn't match with anything, but it's beautiful. And oh, that sweater my aunt gave me that I wear once a year when I see her, right? Like all of these like really disparate pieces. And I think it's so funny that when I start this journey of self-discovery with clients, the conversation always starts with what they do. And I get to say that's wonderful. And where the magic really lies is in who you are and why you get up every morning to do all of these wonderful things you're doing. And that is authenticity.
Oh, it's such a perfect, it's a perfect way of describing. And a lot of what I say, and if you've listened to me in this podcast, those that are listening, you've heard me say that authentic style is derived from your authentic self. You have to spend time getting to know who you are before you can figure out then how you want to present and the messages you want to communicate about who you are to the outside world. So there's a process, there is a discovery period, an evolution of who we are that has to require our attention, space, right? The focus on understanding these messages of who we are and getting really clear about it for ourselves first before anybody else gets to weigh in or have an opinion or start to influence what that might look like. And I think this is one of the important aspects of what I try to do with folks in self-presentation and helping them make these connections about what is that authentic self? Who is that authentic self? What is the message you're trying to say about that authentic self? So, and I know that self-presentation isn't necessarily a key aspect of some of the work you might be doing with a brand or an organization, but I'm wondering what you might say or how important you think it is for an individual or an organization to be thinking about self-presentation in the context of this authentic self.
Yeah, it's 100% important. So much of what an individual or an organization communicates is not verbal. It's not written, it's visual. So self-presentation communicates identity, whether it's for a person putting clothes on their body or an organization putting themselves out into the world. And as I counsel my clients, I like to say it's also a feeling, like an aura of who they are, kind of the energy that they vibe on, and thereby the energy that they attract back. So self-presentation or brand or whatever word you want to use, it's like this entire ecosystem of energy. And I also think it's way harder to be intentional and implement your own, brand, if you will, how you present to the world, than it is for someone else to do it. I don't know about you, but I hear this all the time, especially from the founders that I work with. They'll say to me, I'm a really strong writer, and yet I don't know why I can't figure out what to say about myself or my business. And I've heard it again and again, and I realized I sometimes even fall into that trap. Like, I do this work for other people every day. And when I was preparing for our recording today, I thought, crap, what do I say about myself? It happens to all of us, making that jump from who we are to what we do and how to talk about it is hard.
It's very hard.
And I think that's why working with an objective partner, be it in messaging or in styling, is so helpful, because you and I both are a layer removed.
That's right.
And that's such a great thing. You know, we see things others on the inside don't see.
Yeah, that objectivity, I think, is really critical to the work, because like I say a lot to my clients, like, I'm not invested in your things. So when we're going through closets or we're looking at clothes and trying to reimagine new combinations, I don't have emotional attachments to them. I don't have any kind of association about where you've worn them or not worn them, how it might fit your body, right? Like, there's all sorts of attachments and stories and associations that we have about our things, that I can have an objective perspective and offer that. They can take it or leave it, but it gives them the opportunity to hear something different about themselves. And I can speak directly to this with our work, where you were helping me in context with some website copy. And there are ways that I have been describing my work for like a long time, but I wasn't using a particular phrase or a particular word choice. And then you just repeated it back to me and gave it within a context of how it related to some of the work I was trying to do. And I was like, oh my God, that's so obvious. Like, how did I not see or hear that? But because you were able to hear it from a detached perspective and reflect it back to me, it was like, oh, I get it. I get it.
And I felt the same way working with you, that you went into my closet and looked at what I have and told me, put this shirt with this pair of pants. And I'm like, duh, but I had never thought about it before.
Yeah. And it reinforces the power of that community aspect of the work we're doing, that being in relationship with people, we can offer this for them to help them explore and understand themselves on a deeper level, and offer that perspective and sort of that insight. And you're using words, I'm using clothing, there's lots of different ways that this plays out. And one of the things that I would love to hear more about from either from friends or clients or colleagues or anybody that you've sort of been in relationship with, have you seen examples where style has played a role in their brand development?
You know who I immediately think of, and this is not obviously not someone I know personally, but I think of Apple and Steve Jobs.
Oh yeah.
With the black turtleneck, right?
Yeah.
That became his brand, of a visual representation of who he was, and by extension, who Apple is. They're sleek, they're no frills, ahead of the curve, quite bold, but in a simple way.
Yeah.
So when you think about how Steve Jobs presented himself and then how Apple is as a brand, there's such a congruency there, a symmetry. And I love finding that and helping my clients achieve that. What's their equivalent of a black turtleneck for their organization, right? The visual representation of who they are at the core. And I know that's what you do as well, helping clients find that black turtleneck for them that makes them feel just exactly who they are.
Yeah. I would love if I could go back and interview Steve Jobs. I haven't done this research, so this is giving me an idea that I should go back and look at this, that I'm sure there was somebody who has studied, the ethos of the black turtleneck for Steve Jobs and sort of what he was trying to communicate. And I assume you are exactly right, that it's to mimic so many of the aspects that he visualized about Apple. But I would also love to know, on a personal level, what did that black turtleneck say about Steve Jobs? Like, would he really come to identify with those characteristics? Like, I'm assuming there was authenticity there. I don't mean any disparaging, towards Steve if this wasn't, I don't mean to speak that way, but it's really to I'm curious about that. So I'm going to earmark that for myself to go back and read and see if I'm sure someone who studied this and looked into it.
I'm sure. Maybe that's a blog post though.
Yeah. And I think the thing that I'm really getting at there is that clothes have a way of communicating. And I have a very interesting sort of fascination about when people get dressed, particularly like if I meet someone for the first time and it's a
Mm.
client I haven't had a relationship with or haven't known previously. And I see them in their clothing, and I always ask them this question about like, what do you think your clothes say about you? And usually people will give me a few adjectives or thoughts there. And then we have an entirely different conversation about how accurate that
Mm.
message is. Is it actually representing the you that you think you are, that you want to be? Or is it a facade of you? Is it a impression of you? Is it someone that's imprinted their impressions on you, right? Like trying to get at the heart of what is this message that is coming out in these clothing choices? And is it the message that you want?
Mm.
So I'm going to pose this question to you, Christina,
Uh-oh.
because I think it's really interesting. And I'd love to know for you, like, what do you think your clothes say about you?
Mm. That's what I'm figuring out. And that's why I hired you.
I didn't
Another
even like feed her that question either.
another shameless plug for MFD
Yeah.
style.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
I am finding myself in a mashup of identities, which I'm sure many people can relate to, especially now when the rules of fashion seem to have shifted so much. A woman, a professional, a business owner, a mother, not too far out from being a postpartum mom at that.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of figuring out what all of that looks like in a way that is cohesive and authentic and communicates exactly what you just said, which is what I want to share with the world. And I think I fall into the same trap as my clients. When you get me talking about my vision and what energizes me and what keeps me going, I'll talk your ear off. And then when I have to articulate what it visually looks like or put it into words, I kind of panic a little bit.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
saw that firsthand.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that the multiple identity piece, I think a lot of people can resonate with, because particularly after this pandemic, and I know we're still amidst it in many ways, but it sort of threw us all into the pot, and it was like, okay, now do all your identities at one time.
Right.
And somehow still come out, with everybody alive and eating, and your house is still over your head and all the things, right? And so there was this intensity with which I think many people came to be confronted with this identity thing about like, oh my God, all my identities are operative all day long right now. And I don't get that separation that oftentimes we had been accustomed to. Like, okay, now I'm on my professional duties, or now I'm home and I'm here to do mom duties, and I'm, it's the weekend, so now I'm with my family, right? Like there's a lot of different ways that we have segmented identity based on either our physical location or kind of what we do in the day.
Sure.
And I think clothing has been this really complicated factor in all of that for us. And so I really appreciate what you've said about the mashup piece, because there's still a lot of sorting out that I find a lot of people are doing right now, and helping them get clearer about, well, can I have a blended identity? Can I be this professional business owner and a mom? And I'm going to have to transition between those things pretty seamlessly through my day, given how my day looks.
Right.
So I want my clothing to allow me to do both. And when I have a client in that regard ask that question, I say, well, that's, maybe it feels like a tall order, but I think that's also the reason why you hire someone to help you kind of sort out what that means around function and clothing choice and fabric and all the things that might need to come into play as you make that decision. But I share that because we all have these opportunities where it's going to feel confusing. And I think so much of what your work and my work, and where the real beautiful overlap is helping people come to clarity. And it doesn't mean there's like a binary, like it's X or Y. It just means there's clarity about like, I see those two things are somewhat in conflict with each other today, right? Like I got to figure that out. I got to figure out what it means to be a small business owner and a mom all in the same breath, and how I represent that. And so I don't know about you, but those challenges really drive me up, because I'm like, yeah, that's real life. Real life is messy and complicated.
Yes.
What are
And
your
you
thoughts
say
on that?
this, well, it just makes me think of a phrase that you say to me all the time, which is, it's about the clothes, but it's really not about the clothes, right? And we started the podcast today talking about that even before the strategy, there's the self-discovery.
Yeah.
And so it's really not about the clothes there. It's about who an individual is and where they feel their identity is coming from. And that's the starting point.
And that work, I will say, and that is why this podcast for me is always about the intersection of style, psychology, and spirituality, because I think we will always have to lean into one of those aspects to help us draw out what is that authentic self, where and how does that come to be. And I think if I could add a fourth pillar, I haven't, but if I would, I might add something around communication and language and words, right? Really where you sit, because there is a powerful way that can leverage authenticity and who we are. And so, as you can see, I hope you all, as you're listening, everyone listening to this, you can see why Christina and I can talk for hours and hours and hours, and things can go on magically in all sorts of tangents, but we have such a powerful passion between us about helping people discover this and using our various talents to help extract that. And I think one of the fun parts about our work together was we do not live in the same state. And so I would say the majority of our relationship has been virtual.
100%.
Really bizarre. Like we've talked about this where I think we've like physically been in rooms together like maybe 3 times.
Yep.
And even in one of those, maybe being the most recently over this last summer, we were able to connect in person. And it's really bizarre. I don't know if anybody has relationships like this, and maybe this was a COVID thing or not. I don't know. We were connected before COVID, but our company that we mutually worked for was primarily a remote firm. And so, we were all over the place. And so this relationship that we've had, basically exclusively virtual, was surprising, because I often get clients ask me about the virtual experience of like building a relationship virtually. So so my question is 2 parts for you. The first is, can you talk to me about your virtual work with clients? Because so much of it has to live in that space. And then let's talk about your experience of working with me virtually and what that felt like.
2 very good questions. I will say before I answer them that maybe this is the case for other people, but I am quite shocked that I made it through COVID-19 with a new friend. Like in all of those months of isolation, like I somehow got a new friend out of it, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, me too.
So how I work virtually with clients, I'm fortunate that I now can do both. I have some clients who are geographically close to me, or some clients that I travel to see. And I think COVID has really taught us all to be strategic about, when something just really has to be in person.
Yeah.
And then it's also streamlined work in a lot of ways, where I might have an in-person session or 2 with the client, and then the in-between really can be remote. And I find that to work really well. So I've always tried to see in my work geography not being a limiting factor, that both myself and my clients will know when it's the right time to be in person, and then we'll make it happen. And then the rest can be kind of filled in a virtual setting. And I think the best of both worlds is really beautiful to achieve there. And then, working virtually with you was wonderful. I did not know what to expect going in. Well, your work is so seamless, and talk about planning and poetry. I mean, you're my soul sister there. You're both of those. You are deliberate and thoughtful and action oriented in your work. And I want people who are listening to imagine literal spreadsheets of outfits, like items to buy, down to what size to order. That's always the kicker for me, by the way, the size. literal spreadsheets. So that's the planning. And then there's a beauty to it. You know, your vision for how someone can step into their best selves is beautiful. And so whether it's a virtual environment or not, I mean, you got both planning and poetry right there.
That's so great, friend. Thank you for that. It's so funny because I have another friend, my friend Lisa. She's a strategy person too. Like she likes to talk strategy. And I sort of like, I get a little like twisty about the word strategy. Like it makes me like a little,
a lot of people do,
like,
I think.
Yeah. It's just like, oh God, what is this going to mean? I got to do. Right. And so there's like almost like a visceral reaction to when I hear like someone tell me I need to be strategic. And I can remember both she and you have said to me, Maria, do you know how strategic you are? Like in the way that you work? And I don't identify it in that way because I have this reaction to the word. But your point is really, I appreciate so much of what you've said, because especially in virtual work, it's important to have the strategy, because you can't lean on like sometimes body language and some of the things that you can do to facilitate a relationship with someone in person. So that strategy really helps sort of supplement how the engagement can go and how it can be seamless and effective for someone when you don't have that individual one-on-one in front of you. We can be on Zoom, right? Obviously that there's a way to be interactive, but it's different. Everybody knows it's different. So the virtual experience, I'm grateful that I have clients like you, because I think it's difficult for people to envision what it's like to work with someone in it almost an exclusively virtual way. And I've been able to do that with you and others. And it's really fun actually to have the experience. So thank you for your kind words.
Of course, it feels quite seamless, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think there's a layer of, you know, it can be a very, it puts somebody in a vulnerable position to welcome someone like you into their home. And so in some ways, you know, your virtual presence creates like this padding of comfort too, where someone's in their space kind of on their own, but welcoming you in digitally, right?
Yeah, and it's on their terms.
Exactly.
Yeah, I thank you for that, because that's important, I think, for anybody that works with a service provider like us, where there's going to be this, everybody's in a hybrid world now, right? So there is this way to deliver service that's effective in both in person and the virtual experience. So thank you for that. Christina, I have loved having you on the podcast today. I'm really so grateful to you, but I want our listeners to know how they can connect with you, how, if they have questions around their own messaging and mission and how they can bring this into the world, how can they find you?
Yes. Well, anybody listening today can find me at findyourparable.com and on LinkedIn. And any listener from today's episode who mentions MFG style will receive a 30-minute complimentary consultation to use sometime before the end of the year on their organization's or their own identity, strategy, and communications.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing.
A little gift because I had so much fun with you, Maria, and just want to thank you so much. I know our conversation could go on for many hours, and it many times has. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Christina. Thank you. And everyone, all of Christina's information will be in the show notes. So make sure that if you want to connect with her, you will look there. Don't forget to use that amazing promo code, because I assure you that 30-minute consultation will lead you to many, many helpful conversations with her to really help you get super clear about your work, your organization, even your person. I feel like this can really go on a very individualized level. First of all, I just want to say thank you, because it's such a privilege and an honor always to be with you. I love that you came into this space with me and joined us in Above and Beyond Style, Christina. So grateful for your time.
Right back at you. Thanks, Maria.
And everybody else, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you again next time. Hey there. I wanted to take this opportunity to tell you more about MFD Style, my wardrobe consulting business. I've been styling professionally for nearly 15 years, and it truly is my life's passion and purpose. In fact, my mission is to help you develop a confident and authentic signature style, breathe life into your existing wardrobe, and help you fill in with perfect, versatile pieces that are in line with your style and budget. And yes, all of this can be done both in person or virtually. This experience can transform your life. I have seen it happen countless times. And all you have to do is take that first step. Set up a free 30-minute consultation call with me, and we can start this journey together. You deserve to have a wardrobe that mirrors who you are, and I am so ready to help make that happen. You can find me on the web at mfdstyle.com. Thanks so much for listening today. If you enjoyed what you've heard, I would appreciate you taking the time to leave a review on the podcasting platform you're using and share this episode with others who you think might really enjoy these conversations about personal style. For more information all about MFD Style services, you can find me on the web at mfdstyle.com, on Instagram at mfd_style, where I post almost 5 days a week, or send me an email at maria@mfdstyle.com. I also have a weekly email I send to subscribers, so I will include the link to that sign up in the show notes. So until next time, friends, remember to love yourself and then love yourself some more.